We are ready to get back to the great part of this lunch. I cannot wait to recognize several people in the room that will be honored this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. It sounds like you enjoyed your conversation at lunch. Some of you already probably talked through the eating part. So if you talked through the eating part, feel free to continue. And I hope that you've had an opportunity to meet a few people in the room that you have not known before you walked in here. I am super excited to turn now to the reason that we are here, which is to recognize fundraiser organizations and philanthropists in our community who are doing exemplary work. Today's honorees represent organizations big and small, from young grassroots efforts to institutions with more than a century of history. I am going to jump right into it when I call the honorees up. The stairs are over here. You'll come up, you'll take a quick photo, you'll walk down. There'll be plenty of room for more photos once we complete. And then we will invite them up to have a conversation. So I want to just jump in it and say that our first award recognizes Amherst H. Wilder Foundation. The Wilder Foundation has supported community vitality through both direct service and research for over a century. Throughout its history, the foundation has continuously adapted to the existing and emerging community needs. Today, the foundation is shifting its services to recognize and meet the interconnected economic, health, and educational needs of the communities and family systems. As Wilder adapts for the current needs of those it serves, it listens directly to the people who come through its doors, trusting them to identify their needs, and then together they empower communities to be their own agents of change. I would like to invite the leadership of the Wilder Foundation up to the podium to accept their award. I think there's a camera. Is there a camera? Oh, there he is. Armando and I have not known each other a century, but we've known each other a long time. So congratulations to you and your team. Our next honoree is a legacy philanthropic foundation that has taken a novel approach to distributing grant resources to Black and Native American individuals and families. With the leadership of grant-making directors Jackie Statham-Allen and Eileen Briggs at the Bush Foundation, With the leadership of grant-making directors Jackie and Eileen from the Bush Foundation, they established a $100 million community trust fund that would be administered by 2 community organizations. Recognizing that organizations already operating within Black and Native communities that would have the connections, the foundation wished to serve better, were better positioned to respond to those needs. Allen and Briggs invited NDN Collective and Nexus community partners to steward those funds through a flexible and innovative grant program. Over the next several years, each of these organizations will distribute $50 million from the Bush Foundation to support the wealth-building activities of Black and Native individuals and families. Jackie, I am thrilled to invite you up to accept this award on behalf of the Bush Foundation Community Trust Funds. Armando, you're back. I figured he was on the board. I saw her recognize her board, right? So, that makes a lot of sense. How many of us have like all the hats? I wear all the hats. The fundraising profession and nonprofit sector often looks to best practices, convention, and tradition to guide their work. practices that have proven their effectiveness time and time again in certain contexts, yet are often inadequate to address unique needs of particular communities. As the founder and executive director of Pulamani, if I said it incorrectly, she will fix it for me. Comfort Dondo stepped beyond tradition and convention to provide support needed by her African immigrant community. Guided by her own personal experience, Comfort established a safe and comfortable shelter for African-born survivors of domestic violence where they can receive culturally specific support on the path towards well-being and healing. While many questioned her unconventional strategies, Comfort was clear and unafraid of identifying and providing unique support that her community needed. Comfort, please come up. Comfort's reputation exceeds her. I've heard so much about the wonderful work, and I am delighted to spend this time with her. Like Comfort, the next honoree's personal experience drove them to action. In 2021, Nikki Hangsblaben left their career in international development to found a nonprofit that would provide mentorship opportunities to queer and trans youth. Queer Space Collective is the only LGBTQ+ mentorship program in Minnesota and only one of 5 such organizations in the country. With the prevalence of depression, anxiety, and suicide among LGBTQ+ youth, Nikki knew that she could make a difference in her community by providing queer adult role models. In addition to offering a space that is safe and supportive, Queer Space delivers critical information and resources to their families and caregivers by helping youth develop confidence and pride in their identities. By helping them envision their futures, they are helping to ensure more of those futures become a reality. Nikki, please come up. Quentin Moore, he is a fundraiser, woo! Who models care and respect in all he does. Over the last decade, he has cultivated relationships of warmth and generosity at Penumbra Theater, the YMCA of the North, Project for Pride in Living, and now Ascension Catholic Academy. He commits himself deeply to each mission he serves as he welcomes donors as partners in his work, helps them to identify personally meaningful gifts that fulfill their personal values and philanthropic goals. For Quentin's warmth and generosity and care he brings to all that he does, AFP Minnesota is pleased to recognize him with this award. Quentin, please come up. Quentin, I believe you also serve on the board. Yes. And Quentin also is my neighbor. So if you hear extra warmth, that's why, because we chill in the yard on occasion. Our next honoree is addressing Twin Cities home ownership gap with input directly from Black clients and community members. Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity has helped approximately 2,000 lower-income families, more than 80% who are non-white, to find affordable and stable housing. Rather than a one-size-fits-all strategy, Twin Cities Habitat offers a variety of programs that allow families to find the home that best suits their needs, whether it is a home on the open market or one developed by Habitat. Through its Advancing Black Home Ownership program, Twin Cities Habitat is also addressing many of the financial barriers rooted in historically discriminatory practices to homeowners that are Black and brown in Minnesota. Through a year-long equity and action assessment process, Twin Cities Habitat Habitat has redeveloped its financial coaching program to provide a new cohort-based service that centers the lived experience of Black families. They aren't just keeping what they've learned to themselves either. They're rather sharing it with other housing justice providers across the city, state, and country. I'm very pleased to invite Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity up to the stage to accept this award. This is a group pitch. Our final honoree today is another local organization that is working to address racial disparities in Minnesota. For 30 years, the Wallen Education Partners has built pathways for diverse communities of young scholars to pursue higher education. Today, 91% of the students Wallen serves are students of color. They currently support 1,450 scholars and have a 4-year college graduation rate of 91% for their students. Although the financial support they provide is critical for students, they also recognize the importance of comprehensive wraparound services, from advising to internships and access to other career development opportunities. By addressing the comprehensive needs of students they serve, Wallen is helping to remove systemic barriers and narrow the academic achievement gap in Minnesota. On behalf of everyone at the Wallen Education Partners, I'd like to invite their team to come up to accept this award. So what an incredible group of honorees. Let's have another big round of applause for everyone. And for the team members that maybe were not here today, because we know it takes an entire village to make a program work in this city. Now we're gonna do something a little different for National Philanthropy Day. With such an incredible group of leaders, we wanted to take the opportunity to hear directly from them. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna move into a panel conversation. I'm gonna take a seat behind this podium, and we're gonna just have a talk. And maybe I'll stand up because I need to see you. This is a big group. But we are going to have an opportunity to learn from them. So first, I wanna just start with Comfort, because I wanna make sure, I went over to her and specifically asked her how to say the organization's name. I wrote it down, and then I think I freaked my own self out. I probably had it right from the beginning, but could you please make sure that I have said it correctly, and then say a little bit about the evolution story and why you decided to do the work?
Absolutely. Can you all hear me? Well, first of all, thank you so much.
Yeah. Pull it just a little bit closer.
Okay, it's an honor. Thank you. You were close. It's Pumulani. So the H is silent. And Pumulani is actually my daughter's middle name. It's Zulu, which means lover of peace. And I named my daughter, I named the organization after my daughter because I wanted a reminder of where we started. If you allow me, I'll talk about the Bush Foundation and why it's very important to me personally. Back 5 years ago, I was unhoused, couch hopping, and I knew there were more women like myself who were going through that. I had twins that were little, and I wrote what I would have wanted for myself through the Community Innovation Grant. And Bush honored that, and that's how the organization started. And so the evolution story for me is 2022, I am now a Bush Fellow. Over the COVID period, we housed over 259 women from the homeless encampment camps in Minneapolis. And so I went from being unhoused and in the lowest place of my life, and then to now providing the solution for what I also needed about 5 years ago. So that's my story in short. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love that so much, and I love that I almost mispronounced it so that you could tell the story of that, because much of the work is from the heart. And Jackie, I'm going to go to you next because she pivoted to you with the Bush Foundation. And I told Comfort, I'm like, we have to talk about the Bush leadership and the fellowship because it's been so instrumental in so many people's lives. So I know that you can talk about the $100 million, but can you say anything about the Leadership Award and what you're seeing and how it's supporting people and making a difference in our state?
Yeah, I sure can. The Bush Fellowship, it's one of our core programs, and it has been around for decades, since the 1950s, where we invest in leaders, in their leadership, which sometimes can be hard because so many folks like Comfort, even as she was explaining her work, she talks about the impact she's having on so many others. And we believe that that can be amplified by investing in the leader. So it's a fellowship for 2 years, up to $100,000, where sometimes it can be hard. We have to convince them to invest in themselves. This is not the grant where they invest in their organization. We feel that by helping their leadership skills, that is the investment in the organization and in the community and our region overall. And then you wanted me to talk about the trust fund?
We'll get there. We'll get
right.
there. But thank you for jumping in there. And I'm wondering if Sharice can jump in now because Comfort shared another thing that I think is important in her story and connects to the work that you're doing, Sharice, which was she said, I was unhoused. And there are so many people in our state and in our country that are unhoused, that have a tremendous amount of talent, that often we think about people's financial status as though their ability to achieve is attached to that. And we know that that is not true. You guys are doing some amazing work. You just came back from Arkansas. Alabama. And so, did you hear my accent? Alabama. And so can you share more about the work that you're doing to make sure that we are housing our people?
Absolutely. Comfort, your story resonates with me. 28 years ago, I was also unhoused with my 3 small children. And I'm looking at my co-chair here on Haven Housing because I chair the very shelter that that sheltered me and my children 28 years ago. So you're talking about a full circle story, right? So I have to, in probably just a minute or so, but I can just give you a short story of why I joined Twin Cities Habitat, because I just remember going to the community, was just asking. As I was thinking about joining them, I wasn't sure that I wanted to. I wanted to just ask questions with my peers. What do you know about them? They're an international brand. I know Jimmy Carter is somewhat affiliated with them, but I didn't know really nothing about them. And it was pretty clear that as I was having these conversations, it was a consistent story. They didn't work really well with Black people. Now I'm looking at the data because the data showed that it was 85% people of color. I assume about 50% were Black. But what Twin Cities Habitat didn't quite understand in their almost their 40-year affiliate history is that they were serving our immigrant population. And that's okay. But we were leaving a segment of people behind. As we would describe foundational Black, our 1619 Black. These are the folks that have been impacted by our racist policies for decades and centuries. And I knew we needed to do something different. So we dug deep into our data, understanding first, was it true what the community was saying? And I didn't want to say, oh, Sharice thinks X, Y, and Z. Like, no, let's lead by the data. What does the data tell us? And it was true. So we rolled up our sleeves and said we got work to do because we left an entire segment of people behind, the me's of the world, who also need to obtain home ownership. And that's what we're focusing on. And we're not exclusionary. We're not excluding anybody. But what we're doing is building something to make sure that we're capturing everyone and not leaving anybody behind. So we launched our Advancing Black Home Ownership Program, and we're so proud of this work. We're so proud of this work because Habitat International caught on to this work. That's our corporate entity, and they launched theirs a year after we did. So here we go.
What I appreciate about that, because sometimes in the work that we're in, we sit in where the need is, and we often don't realize where we are still setting the bar across the country or across the globe. And so here's one example of where that exists, and so thank you. There's probably all of these examples sit into that. Nona, you are at Wilder, and y'all are 100 years old. Sharice brought up centuries, and you all have a century under your belt. I've worked at and led Pillsbury United Communities, which was founded in the late 1800s, and the Minneapolis Foundation was founded in 1915. And so there's something about being a solid institution with legacy, but also trying to figure out how do you remain relevant and how do you stay in touch with the needs of the community who's here today. Can you share a little bit about how your work is evolving and how you might think about being relevant in your community?
Absolutely. It's an honor to talk about Wilder. I've been there 28 years, and so I've seen us evolve. I've seen us change. I'm a person who started as a case manager and now sits on the executive team. Wilder is always self-aware and self-critical. Whenever you bring a group of people together, there's an opportunity to test what you've done and push you further. That's what the 450 employees do at the organization. And they do that because we're over 50% people of color. And those folks represent 5 generations, so keep that in mind. So being relevant is important. It starts on the inside. Our staff come to us, they bring ideas. When we say you can lead from any seat, it's true. You can bring forth an idea, you can test it, you can rally some people to be your sponsor and take it to the board and get the support you need to do that. But people come to us for a variety of reasons. We're like most nonprofits. We receive most of our funding from government or philanthropic partners. And that allows us to do safety net work. But like I said, we have a lot of diverse folks in our organization, and they're not satisfied with doing safety net level work, nor are the people who come to us. So they say, how do you move us out of poverty? How do we collaborate? How do we work together to come up with something new and creative? We launched a campaign early in 2010 or so, and you would think as an organization of our age, we had done this a lot of times. This was our first time out the gate, and we raised over $17 million. What that allowed us to really do is say, yes, we want to keep the safety net programs, but what can we create that's new, kind of sexy, and will push the boundaries? And so what we created were cash transfer programs. We were hearing from people that you have a lot of services, but they're not meeting all of my needs. We are smart enough to know we can't meet all the needs, but we can do something fun. And so we created a program called RAISE that's based off of the Family Independence Initiative out of Oakland, California. And we provide cash directly to people. We talked to some funders about this one time, and they say, you mean you're going to give poor people money? Absolutely. Poor is not about intellect. Poor is economic, bottom line. So it's critical that we're listeners and we're responders. We get a lot of flack, we get a lot of feedback. I must say we have a research unit, which is another group of folks who's always pushing us because they hear about things across the country, they hear about new ideas, and they say, here's a new best practice, and then we bring it into play. We have a secret sauce because we are practitioners and we're researchers. And so that gives us a little bit of an edge, and it makes us constantly churn and we're never satisfied. And so I think that's why we've been able to stay around. We hear from folks. We have lots of advisory councils that are made up of people who we serve, and they get to give us feedback on programs, policies, what works, what does not work. And now we're beginning to do a whole family strategy, and we've hired several of the people who initially came to us for services. And so they have been able to continue to inform the work that we're doing. We have no arbitrary line any longer between who's the community and who's the staff. It's one and the same. And that encourages us and pushes us forward.
I love it. I love it. And did you say 72 million?
No, would love that. Next goal, 17.
I got it. I got it. I'm like, 72? I got stuck there for a minute.
I would love 72 million, so advancement VP.
Yeah.
Next time out the gate, that's the goal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you know. So we've talked a little bit about housing and sort of the history. We have older organizations, newer organizations. A lot of our work is about addressing disparities and getting to systems change efforts that are necessary. One of those areas that still has a ways to go, but we know we've made strides in, is in education. And so, Aaron, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your work. And I once was a Wallen mentor for a student, and so I have warmth there, and I know what a difference education can make. And so my question for you is, one, is in light of the changes with affirmative action, how might you be thinking differently about raising dollars for scholarship if it's harder for students potentially to get into higher education?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When we think about, so Wallen's a college and career success program. We provide financial aid, comprehensive support, career development, and more to ensure our scholars are succeeding and in college and into the workforce. When we think about affirmative action, right now we're lucky in the sense that we are a nonprofit. We're not a higher educational institution. And at the point where we are looking at our partner schools and saying, we have this unique group of students that are talented and this natural pipeline, and how can you partner with us more to provide more opportunities? And so we're just starting those conversations. It's a continual conversation. There's a lot happening in the higher educational field right now.
Mm-hmm. And Aaron, I imagine that 91% rate of graduation is due to the wraparound services. Have those needed to shift over the last years, or are they pretty consistently food, housing? Like what are those services?
Yeah, our services have shifted over the last year. For 30 years, we've been doing this model, and as we look at it, and our scholars' needs change, particularly over COVID. And I hate to bring up COVID because we all want to be out of it, but at the same time, we recognize and across the community is that mental health has really been a challenge for our scholars, for our youth, for everyone around. And so as part of meeting those needs, we had all of our advisors, we have 15 advisors on staff who went through mental health training to understand how can you support students and scholars better in the community, where we can pull additional resources, and also self-care for our advisors, because they are managing a lot, and they're hearing the stories, they're building the relationships, and we have to provide the support on both sides.
Mm-hmm. And Quentin, are you feeling that same thing at Ascension? You are doing incredible work there. I know many of the students rely on the gifts of many generous people to not just get them to and through Ascension, but you guys have an incredible pipeline. Can you talk about how you're approaching that?
Yeah, so for folks who don't know, Ascension Catholic School has been around since 1897 on the north side of Minneapolis. And back in 2014, Ascension Catholic School was approached by the GHR Foundation to establish Ascension Catholic Academy. And so we actually oversee 4 schools within the Twin Cities area, specifically in the urban core of North Minneapolis at Ascension, John Paul II in Northeast Minneapolis, St. Peter Claver, which is in the Rondo neighborhood, and then St. Pascal Regional, which is on the east side of St. Paul. So overall, we serve close to 750 scholars on an annual basis. And I think what we're seeing is what a lot of folks are seeing in terms of scholars and families still coming out of COVID is that support for mental health and really focusing on well-being, right? How can we ensure that scholars, families, they have the tools and resources to show up, be present in the classroom, be present with school leadership, so that their scholars can get the best out of the experience that we provide. And so we continue to walk that journey in partnership with families. We've got many parent committees set up at our schools, so we're hearing what they need, and we're also reimagining how we provide educational experience, specifically faith-based Catholic education, what does that look like over the next 5, 10, 20, 25 years, and ensuring that it's an excellent education.
Thank you for that. Like, what moved you to do that? What's happening that we should know about with the young people and families that you're working with?
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks again for the honor to be here. So our queer and trans community has definitely been under attack over the last few years. Anti-LGBTQ bills across our country is more than 500 in 2023, and just a few years ago there was maybe 20. And so our young people are seeing this, they're experiencing this, they're feeling this. Again, coming off of the pandemic also, and feeling that, you know, those deep feelings of social isolation that all of our young people went through. Kind of coming out of that, queer and trans youth are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide than their hetero peers, and they make up 40% of the youth homeless population. But we know that if a LGBTQ plus youth has at least one supportive adult in their life, that they're 40% less likely to attempt suicide, which is like really huge. And so my background is in international development. I had been kind of traveling the globe, working with different communities on creating solutions in those communities to make for more prosperous lives, and just wanted to do something a little bit closer to home for my community. I'm sure many of you took a step back in 2020 and kind of reevaluated priorities. And so we launched in 2021 with a mentorship program. And you know, we started giving this support to our young people, and the parents started saying, well, wait a minute, we need help too. Can you provide training for us? And the mentor said, this is an amazing community. Can you create more spaces for us to connect as mentors? Because as adults, we also need more opportunities. We don't have an LGBTQ center in the state of Minnesota, which is very unique. Almost every other state does. But we also have, we're a trans refuge state. So we're doing a lot of really great things here across our state. And we're here to just kind of show up for young people and their families and fill some of those gaps.
Thank you. Jackie. I have so much more to say about there not being a community center here for that. And part of what I'm experiencing in my body right now is I was on a panel last week in LA talking about grief and trauma following events. And I was on that panel, and there was something unique about it, which was I was the only heterosexual, and I was the only woman, and I was the only black person on the panel. So I'm often the only black person, but the other two has not always been the case. And so I was able to actually listen much differently. And the other panelists, one came from Club Q and the other from Pulse Nightclub. And the one thing that was consistent was that there was no gathering places, that it was the bars and the clubs and the informal environments, and that the built environment, the service environment, has tremendously failed those communities. And so thank you for your leadership there, because we need to address the gaps before it becomes unbearable and we can't address it. So really, thank you for that. Jackie, the work at the Bush Foundation was examined differently following the events of 2020. And the team there at Bush was thinking differently about how to make investments in community. Can you share a little bit of the story? And I think it would be helpful to just talk about, if you can, what was happening inside before you got to the outside solution that we see, which is $100 million.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that question. So in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, I think we all, especially being at the epicenter of all of that, we felt a real urgent need to do something different. And we heard so many corporations and people pledging to do something different with words, but not necessarily doing anything different with their businesses and how they give. And the Bush Foundation really wanted to be different than that. We wanted to put action behind our commitments. And they were our commitments around racial equity and addressing systemic injustice. And so our board, like Armando's here today, our board was ready. We had actually been preparing for moments to advance our equity even further. For instance, in 2018, so this was way before any of the events of 2020 happened, our board did an exercise where we looked at critiques of philanthropy, such as having endowments in perpetuity, or general ops funding. And one of them was reparations. Should our foundation take on a reparations approach to our grant making? At that point, it was still an exercise, but it was something that our staff and our board was able to wrestle with, and I think it made us all the more ready to, when something happened in 2020, when the murder of George Floyd happened, that we were able to then develop something that would really impact the communities that we felt are most impacted by racial injustice. And that's how we designed our initiative, $100 million to address racial wealth disparities by giving to individuals in Black and Native American communities. And we chose those two communities because of the historic and lasting legacy that has caused a profound racial wealth gap based off of race-based US policy, such as the enslavement of Africans, the taking of land, the Homestead Act, boarding schools, redlining, the list goes on and on. There are a lot of legal race-based policies of the US that have had a lasting impact on Black Americans and Native Americans. And we involved community in the design of the initiative, and we were ready to announce by March of 2021 that we were seeding 2 community trust funds, one for individuals in Black communities and one for individuals in Native American communities, through grants to individuals. We heard the same thing. You're giving money to individuals. What will they use it for? Well, they're going to use it to build wealth, because wealth is generational, and in order to build, wealth is about, so often, it's about the wealth that was or was not present in the generations before you. So a lot of people who have wealth, it's because their families before them passed down. Maybe they even bought, paid for the house. Maybe they, their wills, they passed down a lot of money. And for a lot of us in Black and Native American communities, we don't have that. And so that's why we wanted to invest directly in individuals so that they could build that generational wealth. And we found 2 community organizations. We knew that the Bush Foundation, while we had the resources, we were not the right organization to actually operate these. And so we chose 2 organizations to receive the $50 million grants. Nexus Community Partners, based out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and also Indian Collective. They're based out of Rapid City, South Dakota. And they know community, and they designed beautiful grant programs, and they received the funds. They are not our intermediaries. They have the funds now, and they are stewarding it on behalf of those communities. And I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen over the next 8 years, 5 years, 10 years, generations, as they begin those steps of building wealth.
I'm not super familiar with both of the programs, but I am familiar with the one that Nexus has. And on top of it being available to individuals, they're available to individuals over 14 years old.
That's right, 14 and over.
So why 14 and older? Why not 18? What's a I've had a 14-year-old before.
Well, we really felt that our young people have ideas too, and they have the opportunity to begin the process now through micro businesses. We all know some kids who are hustling, doing, braiding hair, or doing other entrepreneurs, or maybe they want to go to a high school that costs a lot of money, that they shouldn't have to wait until college to receive a scholarship. And also, we're going to protect them. So Nexus Community Partners has established ways in which to make sure that, I think there are 2 recipients who are under the age of 18, and we're handling those funds differently to make sure that they are protected and that those funds are there for those young people, and that they aren't taken advantage of.
Good deal. I love it. I was thinking about Bill Strickland's quote, and he says, the only thing wrong with poor people is that they don't have any money. And so it's amazing what small amounts of money can do to have people be seen and for them to dig deeper into the dreams that they've imagined for themselves. And so it's really important work, and it's certainly setting a chart, and I'm standing ready to hear the lessons that come out of it. And so thank you to the entire Bush Foundation for that work. Comfort, you also started an organization. You saw needs in your community that were going unaddressed. You did it in an unconventional way. I'm curious on what did you do that was unconventional?
I think most of what I did still continues to be unconventional. So in establishing the space that I needed for myself, I realized in Minnesota, we have at least about 22 African immigrant countries represented, but then the services don't really capture that. We have two of the largest Civil War survivors. So we have Somalis in Minnesota, and we have Liberians out of Monrovia here in Minnesota. And so I designed it by considering what was lacking, which was trauma-informed services. There's a lot of survivors of domestic violence who would not go to shelter. As I've heard from some of and the shelters here are great, but from some of the women it's re-traumatizing. It feels like the refugee camps they came from. Sometimes we don't have traditional families, so we have like nuclear families and you're staying with your mother-in-law or your sister. And so if she wants to flee, she cannot flee with the whole family. And so those barriers is why we have a sister who just lost her life last year, Petrie. It's from Liberia. She couldn't move to a shelter because she had teenage sons, and she couldn't move into a shelter with teenage sons. So I looked at those nuances, and I wanted to create a place that would accommodate for some of those hurdles. And for those women who are able to go to a mainstream shelter, that's fine. But there's that gap for those who are not able to. And we know when a woman stays longer in that relationship, the end is death. So that's what I did. And then I also want to introduce the term that I keep using is cultural specificity, that the communities that are impacted have solutions. I wrote something that you said that I love. You said, poverty is a state, it's an economic state. It's not an intellect lacking of. And so I think that is one of the main things. The people in those communities, in those cultural communities, whether they speak English, they speak French, whether they just arrived from their country of origin, they still know exactly what is best for them. And so I try to design programs that honor that. Thank you. Yeah.
I think acknowledging the nuances that happen in community is so important. I've been on all the sides, as I stated, and when I was at Pillsbury, I used to, the Brian Coyle Center was one of the locations, and I would be in conversations with funders, and they were like, well, we already fund a program in that neighborhood, and you're like, there's like 18,000 kids, there's a bunch of different people that speak different languages, that have different needs, and so often we are thought about as a monolith. And I think here you're seeing the nuances of how they're navigating that space. I want to switch, and I'm going to ask you all this question, which are around the challenges and the strategies of fundraising, particularly when you are either charting a new course or thinking about it from a community-centric point of view. And so I think, Erin, I'm going to start with you and have you just share maybe what some of the challenges and strategies that you have for fundraising.
Yeah, I think when, I'm thinking still. It's not to say we don't have challenges, but when I think about it and how it relates to community-centric fundraising is Wallen's unique in the sense that we're really a major gift model. We have a very few in our annual fund, but we haven't done a great job of engaging our alums and those who've been in our program in the past. And how do we continue to build that and where is that at, and where are the voices coming at, and what is the need? We've done really good at engaging our scholars in conversations to ensure that we're building and developing programming that supports their needs, but also understanding that we have an opportunity to continue to engage our alumni in the work and the efforts and the support of the program as well, coming from both sides.
Thank you for that. And Sharice, housing, like we've heard about it personally from you and Comfort, and there's so many stories of people that I can share that are doing phenomenal, very visible work in this community that started out housing insecure, that have navigated that space. We have a model now that's not meeting the financial needs of our community. And so what challenges are you faced with in terms of fundraising in the housing area?
Thank you for that question. I think not so much of challenges. I think we had an opportunity to educate our funders, because when we are,
Big claps. And I like the reframing, right? We had an opportunity to educate.
Yeah, because I think the first step, we started this work in 2018 by just aggregating our data, like understanding what happened. And we partnered with a researcher, Dr. Brittany Lewis. Yes, absolutely. She started an engagement project. And once she provided the summary and the recommendations directly from those who participated, so let me just be very clear, we work with our home buyers, homeowners, and community members. So it was not Twin Cities Habitat sitting in a room trying to understand, what should we do? No, we listened. We centered their voices. Dr. Lewis, respected, renowned, led real conversations, and she got real feedback. And when I say it was hard to listen, but we needed to listen. It was hard to just listen, to how bad things were when they partnered with us. But we took it to heart. Those recommendations are built into our program now. So the education part comes with sharing with funders the process and why we have this unique program, because we have unique barriers. So we're addressing the barriers. We're providing, we don't call it reparations, but somewhat like reparations, where we have an additional down payment assistance. So if there's a savings requirement, guess what? We would cover that for you. So that's not a barrier for you. Cohort support, they get to go through this together. They see someone that they can relate to. Representation, I've heard many times, representation is so important. So having people that look like them, ride with them. And I'm not saying we're directing them. I'm a certified coach. I'm in the passenger seat always. I may raise my hand every now and then and say, have you thought about left versus going right? But it is your agenda, not mine. And we just want to help you achieve your goal, however and wherever and whatever it takes, so you can achieve your goal. So we just did more education with our funders and our donors. Just explaining to them the unique barriers, connecting the dots for them. And there was some fear that donors may leave us. I only know of one who didn't understand why we were just talking about black. That's okay. We said, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Because if you're not part of this work, then you shouldn't be part of this work. And, but we moved on. And we don't have those challenges because we educated, just explaining to them what this is and why we need to take a different path and why we need to provide additional support. And they got it.
Yeah. I've heard so many stories of people taking big bets that they waited on because they were afraid of how their donors would respond. And in all the stories I've heard, it's always been under 3 people that have walked away, and then you gain so many more people. And so the delay is probably never really worth it, but if you're intentional. And so I like how you are embedding in voices of community. Quentin, I have thought a lot about this generation of students because I spend a lot of time in that space, and our young people are having to grow up to adult situations really quickly. And I think that social media brings them into conversations that when I was a kid, I would have to leave the room, including the visible death of people, and thinking about death due to COVID and all of the other things that when you're a kid, you just don't really need to think about. But it's been front and forward. And so my question to you is, number one, how is that showing up in the school? And then number two, are you having to fundraise for different things for the students that you've seen in the past?
Really good question, Shonda. And yeah, I think one is we all continue to see our young people impacted by death and violence, and specifically the communities that we are privileged to walk alongside of annually at a disproportionate rate in many ways. And the seeing that on a tablet or a phone or a screen where, a scholar might be used to watching a video game or a movie or something like that is devastating. And so, like I said before, we as an academy are really honoring the moment that we're in as it relates to that violence, recognizing that that is showing up in many different ways, not only for our scholars, but for our teachers, for our leadership, for our education assistants, or folks who are assisting in the classrooms, for our mentors and tutors. And so really, as an organization, we are looking at what are ways that we can provide healthy healing doses on an everyday basis, right? And I think that starts with healthy relationships. So what does that scholar-teacher relationship look like in the classroom? Nutrition is really important, physical education, mindfulness as well. And, I would say we're blessed in a sense that we are a Catholic institution, and so we can lean into that faith. We can provide that hope and prayer and walking alongside families in a different way than some of our public or charter school partners can. And so we really honor that, and we deem it a privilege. And we know that, folks are showing up in many different ways. And so how do you continue to honor that lived experience and make sure that you're able to resource that trauma? And, I think we've had a lot of donors step up in many different ways as it relates to some of the well-being work that we are currently doing and hope to do in the future. And we're really approaching that work with an abundance mindset, And I think sometimes when it comes to challenges in fundraising, it can be this thought that, if dollars go here, then they have to come from here, or there can't be this win-win, when honestly there's more than enough resources to go around. And so really shifting that mindset of deficit to abundance, and ensuring that folks have that opportunity.
Well, thank you for that. When I put my oldest son into middle school, they said his only job is to avoid being humiliated in front of his peers. And so if you're a mom and you remember that and you come from a place of kids not wanting to be isolated and included, it helps you see things from their point of view. And I'll always remember that. And so, Nikki, for the young people that you are serving, there is a level of, I guess, from how I hear it and understanding of seeking community, being isolated, being misunderstood, not being accepted, being pushed out, all of those things, or maybe not even having anyone who can relate to what they're going through in terms of how they see their own identity and their place in the world. And so, I don't know what funding has been like for you, getting resources to support your vision, your dream in the community. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges, and are there specific needs that we need to understand more better?
Yeah, fundraising, it's been interesting and fun and exciting. We have been hustling, so we're only 2.5 years old, so of course we're out, you know, we go to drag brunches every Sunday and fundraise there, and also just share the message about our organization. So we've actually got a lot of partnerships through those, and mentors who show up. Foundations, you know, a lot of them locally have really been stepping up. I think there's been a dearth of organizations like ours supporting queer and trans youth, that some foundations were excited that we were on the scene and ready to support because they were seeing this deep need and a gap. And so that's been great. I think we're also educating our older generations of LGBTQ plus adults have been fighting, you know, back against discriminatory practices and, you know, the whole gay marriage thing, like that was still less than 10 years ago. So people are tired. I mean, I think that's true across a lot of marginalized populations of people. And I know in our community, folks are tired. So, and as you know, with young people, you know, language is changing. And so there's like a disconnect also between generations. And so we try to, you know, do a lot of education with older generations on pronouns and like how do you show up for queer and trans youth. And it's cool if they want to look like this, act like this, be like this, change their name, show up with different pronouns. Like we're just giving them the space to be their authentic selves, and there's so much power in that. And so I think one of our challenges and also an amazing opportunity is to re-engage some of the older generations in our community, help them, you know, bridge that gap and help them understand our young people, and reinvest in the younger generation. So
I think I'm the older generation. There's lots of changes, and I think it's pushed our organizations for the better. And I hope that all of our communities can find acceptance and belonging and opportunity. Comfort, the question that I have for you that I want to start out around maybe the challenges is one of, does the word philanthropy translate into African communities in the same way that we define it here?
No.
Yeah, that was a good no.
Yeah, so when I hear fundraise, so yeah, within the African diaspora, African immigrant community, philanthropy looks a little different, which has made fundraising a challenge for our small program. Our fundraising philanthropy, it is steeped in the philosophy of Ubuntu. That is, I am because we are. And so we have practices like susu, some call it, or pass the hat, like what I do with my sisters, where each month, you know, 12 of us contribute $100, and one person gets $1,200 each month. And
Can everyone hear?
And that cycle goes for 2 years. It goes over twice. So in a year, I get $2,400. And that money has helped me personally to pay my children's tuition, pay for their lunch, right? That's kind of how philanthropy looks like in our community. So, since it does not translate, it therefore makes it hard to try and do fundraising the way that mainstream might do fundraising. So we end up being very creative in how we do the fundraising. I'll share a story. I was running a little bit late today because I have a pregnant mom who needs to be housed. But some of those nuances I was talking about, she's new immigrant, was trafficked, so she doesn't have her documentation. So many barriers for her to get some services. But I had the elder from her community, I think I have four different people, including a pastor, put together some resources for an Airbnb. So that's kind of how we do the work, which is not very traditional or very typical. And then I think the other challenge as far as fundraising is just capacity. I think this speaks to a lot of the marginalized or smaller, newer programs. And I'm very thankful. I have to shout out to you, to the work of the Black Collective, that I get to be one of the builders, one of the 15 builders that were chosen, and I'm really learning how to do grant making. And I think from those skills, I'll try to translate those to the work we're trying to do in our community. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the ultimate translation work on top of running an organization to translate all of the things back and forth. I'm sure that takes a toll, so thank you for that work. Jackie, you don't have to fundraise, but you listen and hear from a lot of people that do. What are the themes that are coming up around what is happening for the nonprofits that you hear from?
Yeah, there are a lot of themes of course, access, trying to get the resources, and making sure that there's understanding of how to get into foundations. And because of that, the Bush Foundation, about 2.5 years ago, we did a pretty major restructure where we became committed for all of our grant making to be through open programs. So every single grant dollar that we put out, it comes through a competitive process. There are no invitation only, there are no just give it to an organization that we know. For every grant dollar that we give out, it has to come through some sort of program. We also are working to be more accessible, so we have inquiry, we have phone lines, people can set up appointments, and for organizations, especially smaller organizations or ones that are serving rural communities or BIPOC communities, we will help them shape their application. We will help them talk it through. We will have meetings before they actually submit. And we also provide feedback. Our programs are pretty competitive, so if they don't get it, we provide feedback, and then they're able to submit again. And then the last thing is, we realize that we are a foundation with a lot of resources, and we try to be in the community, and that there are organizations that are even closer to the community. So we are doing a lot of our grant making through, like I just explained with Nexus and NDN, rather than us doing that program, those community organizations are, but we also have the same for programs in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and one for Native nations and Native communities, where we give grants to organizations and then they are able to give within their communities that they know better.
Love it. Nona, what is happening at Wilder with your fundraising? Are there any challenges?
Of course there are. So I think as long as we've been around, I did say we just really in earnest started this effort of trying to fundraise. I think part of our story is one that reminding people we do need the dollars to do the work. We happen to have a big building and we have an endowment. So we have to tell people, despite those things, we still need dollars to serve the people who come to us. The other challenge we face is that we provide quite a bit of mental health services. So those services are private from an ethical standpoint and legal standpoint. We cannot share those stories. So that segment of the business often is not shared, other than maybe a collective or removing all the identifiers. We're really trying to tell stories from a strength-based perspective. So having donors who come in and appreciate the resiliency of people we serve, and that we're not going to have a broke-down story to tell. We're going to tell a story that's lifting people up and celebrating their capacity. And so I think that's often needing to do education of donors, but also ensuring that we stay true to our values. And I would say second for us is we don't have a built-in alumni, association, or people who come back to us. And so those are some of the challenges that we have. I think in also recognizing we want to diversify our donor pool. We've started by diversifying our board. We currently have a board that's over, I think, 55% BIPOC folks. So we're looking to have diverse donors, and also building capacity for people to come in, even if they're not high-end donors, but they can build capacity and over a lifespan become closer to a high-end type of donor. So we're doing a lot of work.
Good deal. I have one more question, and that one is about hope. And I'd like to just sort of end a conversation on what is giving you the most hope. Where do you see the most opportunity in the work that you're leading? And Quentin, can I start with you? Sure. That was a no, but yeah, I'll do it.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm hopeful because you all are here. And I think it shows a lot I should say it says a lot in terms of the commitment that you have to those who are doing the work, those who are promoting the work, and those who will continue to bring this work into the future. So you all should be giving yourselves a round of applause for being here today in support of this event. The other piece that's given me hope is that I'm an optimist by nature, and I believe that our world is a naturally beautiful, good place. And I continue to see the resilience of our scholars, of our families, of our communities to step up and show up time after time after time again. And I think that speaks to who we are as people and how connected we are as human beings. And the more that we can continue to live into that space with each other, recognizing that we all come from different walks of life, we recognize the intersectionalities that enter our organizations, but that we are human beings, right? And being there for one another is the best thing we can do. So again, you all give me hope in the wonderful work that is taking place by all these folks and organizations on this panel is giving me hope.
Good deal. Nikki, what's giving you hope these days?
Is that me?
Yeah.
I feel like it's dropped the mic after what Quentin said there. I also am an optimistic person, and I feel like I work in community with a very heart-open way. And I don't know, I just keep seeing people show up and create these spaces for our young people and for our community to like be themselves. And it's really, when you give space to these kids who are coming from all over the Twin City metro area and you're putting them in these rooms with art projects and other kids who are a little bit like them, but not really, because everyone's different in their own beautiful way. You just see like the smiles and kids thriving, and you read the report, and you know there's all this information about how rough their life is or how concerned people are, and then they come into these spaces and they're just lit up. So that gives me hope. I think the more we all can create containers and spaces for all of us to show up as our authentic selves, it's just really beautiful. So,
Thank you. Comfort, how about you?
Thank you. Being a smaller organization that's building from the ground up, some days are hard. Like yesterday was really hard, or this season was really hard, but I don't give up. What gives me hope is getting an email from Paulette Foundation yesterday that they have given 3 of our survivors, flexible funds to keep them housed or to increase their housing security. It gives me hope every time there's that little step. It gives me hope to know that I sit here across from my sister who has a 28-year-old story, and I have a 5-year-old story, and we were in the same place, and we're here. That gives me hope. And I think in ending, what gives me hope is what the Dalai Lama said, that in a world that has 7 billion people, we have a duty to connect to each other. And you can only get happiness when you do give it out. So that always gives me hope. Even when I don't have the capacity, I still try to give happiness because I know it comes back to me. This is what really gives me hope. Yeah.
Same question, what gives me hope? Young people give me hope. So a big part of my portfolio of grant making is around student-centered learning, so making education more relevant for learners. And we had a convening right here in this space in the spring. And young people are made different now. So they've been challenged, but I think through that challenge also, they know how to advocate for themselves. They will shout rather than settle. And Nikki, hearing you talk about the young people you support, I love that. So that gives me hope that this next generation, they are going to make the world better because they're going to demand it.
I'm a mother of one of those people, so yeah, I experience that often. What gives me hope is that we're moving toward the arc of justice. So I think about Dr. Martin Luther King. I keep it in my office. It keeps me centered. I'm a Southerner. It keeps me grounded. I'm hopeful by the generosity of people. I think the death of George Floyd created opportunity for people to reckon with themselves, their hearts, and I think hearts have been opened. And I think we've seen that through funding, through flexible funding, through multi-year funding. But I'm excited about the people I work with every day. They show up, they challenge. My CEO probably would like us to stop challenging, but we challenge, we push, we ask hard questions, and then we go about doing the work to create a space that's inclusive for others. And so that's what keeps me excited.
I'm sure he loves the challenges. How about you, Erin?
I love everything everyone's saying, so I'm trying not to repeat too, but at the same time, I think what gives me hope is the partners within this room, within our community, of what we work on together to create better outcomes for youth in our community as it relates to the mission that I'm a part of. But at the same time, knowing that we're working towards change, and ultimately we're gonna get there as long as we're doing it together. So I'm hopeful for the future. I'm hopeful for the opportunities that we continue to provide and the collaboration amongst all of us in this room.
For me, it's personal. My children give me hope, my adult children. They don't have to experience what I experienced. They're building their own wealth, their own way. And I just get to sit on the sideline and just cheer them on. As a mom, that's rewarding, it's inspiring, because I know what my story is and how it started. They don't have that story. Professionally, we're setting this, we're making some things happen in the habitat affiliate, across our habitat affiliates. They're catching on. And that's hopeful because they're also starting to look closely at how they're serving. Even, to have Habitat International kick off Advancing Black Home Ownership initiative was hopeful that they got it. They understand that it's not one shoe fits all. We have to look at individuals. We talk a lot about person-centered, human-centered. Let's really do that work. See people. And I just know from just the feedback that we got from home buyers in our program is that the first thing that they said is they felt seen and heard. And that is just so hopeful and inspiring for our affiliate because we are listening. We're centering their voices. We're pivoting, we're pausing, we're collecting their feedback. And we're not pretending like we got it perfect. It's not perfect, it's nowhere near perfect. But as long as we're open to just listening and learning, we will figure this out. And I just wished that we all took that approach. Look at uniqueness across our region. Our unique participants and scholars and our community, look at them as people and not fit them in one box. Because they all have unique barriers. And how do we solve to those unique barriers? That's when the region starts to shift. That's when we can really close that gap, no matter what we're talking about: health, education, home ownership, even marriage.
Even marriage.
Even
there
marriage. So I'm inspired and hopeful for just people just thinking about changing and shifting and just thinking about your thinking and being okay with just not being status quo.
Let's give it up for this fantastic panel, our honorees. This is a lot of people on a panel. It's a big panel, and I hope that you had an opportunity to get to know their work, the value that they have for community, and the things that inspire them. And they will be around in the room. They certainly are around in community. That if something sparked your interest, if it provided a little something in your heart that you want to just grab a hold of, I invite you to have conversations with them. Hope is such an active word. When people don't have hope, they don't feel like they have choices, and when they don't have choices, they don't make good decisions. And so thank you for being the holders of hope in our community. Thank you for the work. I'm really proud of being in this community with you and for the work that you're leading. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And thank you for listening, and have a good one.